So, in part one of our Psalm 78 commentary, we talked about Ephraim being called out by name, but also it referenced that although they were armed with bows, turned back on the day of battle. And now we're going to cover why that is so significant. So, I'm reading from BibleHub.com, Ellicott's commentary for English readers. Now, as I read through this, learned something interesting. Hosea 7:16 comments about how men that do not live for God's laws. So the law of Moses. Remember, Asaph touched on that in the first little bit of Psalm 78 there, that they are like a faulty bow. Now, if you know anything about the technology of a bow, it has a string. And it essentially compares the failure of the men of Ephraim to a faulty bow string. So if your string fails, the bow's useless, right? According to this text, the Battle of Cressy was started by a shower of rain, which destroyed the bowstrings of the men of Ephraim. Okay, now it's just a comment from a historian, so it doesn't actually say that in the Bible. But what's interesting here is he does reference that the men of Ephraim, their bows failed, and that's why they retreated. And again, this is just this commentary, which is more important than we realize by the fact that the men of Ephraim excelled at archery. So it almost seems like this historical account matching up with biblical references is telling us that the men of Ephraim should have owned that day. If you know anything about bow technology, that was like the pinnacle of warfare. That was essentially comparing it to modern day artillery. Like you couldn't combat bows. The only way you could combat bows if the men firing them sucked. Well, according to this, the men of Ephraim didn't suck at archery. Their bows literally failed. Their bowstrings got wet, which should have happened. They should have had it covered with beeswax. But they still failed. And so the men of Ephraim, being not following God's laws, they failed right as Israel needed them. Part 3 coming up.